Hello, YouTube. I hope you're doing well. This is Sky.
And it's Quinn, and we have a special guest joining us today, Sky's twin sister.
Hey guys, I'm Amelia.
And we just wanted to have a couple guests come on our show every now and then just to get some different perspective.
Yeah, just, a time-to-time thing. We just love hearing, other people's voices and getting more, stories and examples of what we're talking about. So,
Yeah, this will be
happy to have
cool.
you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm.
So today we wanted to talk about phoniness in society. And what brought on my interest in this topic and Sky's interest in this topic is this week I was reading The Catcher in the Rye, and the main character, Holden Caulfield, is really focused on phoniness and he calls a bunch of people phony. And we just wanted to discover what really makes a person phony and why they would do that.
Mm-hmm. And I have a definition of phony, and it is not genuine or fraudulent, and then also somebody who pretends to be something else.
Interesting. Well, I actually have kind of a running theory about phoniness. So I feel like everyone at some point, acts in a phony manner, and it just depends on the degree of that phoniness and the frequency that a person is phony. But you might be sitting there thinking, "What? I'm not phony," and I probably would be too. But I think one thing Quinn and I realized is that with pleasantries, people are often quite phony. Like if I'm like, "Hey Quinn, how are you today?"
Then I would say, oh, I'm good, even if I'm having a really horrible day, because it's just easier to say I'm good than to get into what's making my day so bad, because people don't really want to hear that.
Yeah. And I think there's definitely situations where it could be appropriate, like with someone you're more close to and, they really have time to listen and that they really care. But I think there's also times when it's just kind of our custom to ask that question. And if you're going to say anything below I'm fine or I'm okay, if you want to say, I'm feeling so blue today, that's, no one does that because it's kind of, it requires their attention and it requires their sympathy, and that's kind of asking a lot for some relationships that you're in. If I'm walking into math class and my teacher is like, "Hey, how are you?" He doesn't want to know about all my life problems, and I mean, it depends on the teacher too.
Yeah.
But I think when it's too far, and I think that phoniness in that case isn't necessarily a bad thing because you're making sure that you're not, going too far and telling people too much when they're not really there to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that another example of when phoniness actually is acceptable is just, for me, I work at a bakery, and so when we have customers coming in and, we've been working, if I have a 6-hour shift or something, towards the end of that, I wouldn't say that I have a very genuine smile or that I'm actually very, excited, oh, yay, there's another customer. I kind of have to put on an act, I would say, but in this case, it's better to be a little bit phony than to be rude and to let your feelings show, because first of all, it's professional, and second of all, you just don't want to be rude to people, so,
yeah.
Personally, that's my opinion on that.
And it's just kind of pulling out joy. It's not exactly, I think there's a line between phoniness and then just trying to be genuine and I don't know. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad phoniness.
Right, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Mm-hmm. There are definitely different levels of phoniness. I feel like the worst kind of phoniness is when you're being phony, is when you're being mean. It's if you talk about people behind their backs, and where you're all nice to their face, and you're like, "Oh, I love you, you're my best friend," and then you go back to your other friends, you're like, "Oh, I hate her, she's so stupid." I feel like that's when you're being phony, when you're deliberately being phony, and that's mean, and that's like crossing the next level. But I feel like just the pleasantries, that's just so standard. It's just like, how are you is almost just like saying hi.
Right. It's just kind of a custom thing that we do, and no one really thinks, oh, you're being phony, you know?
Yeah.
Definitely. And, like we've, like, Sky and I said before, we're in AP Lit. And, you know, I know we talk about AP Lit a lot, but just so many ideas present themselves in books that you just want to, like, expand upon and talk about them more.
And it's our favorite class, right?
Definitely.
Like, yeah. And we have the same class period, so it's pretty awesome. We sit next to each other.
Yes, it's quite ironic in class because we are rather silent and just communicate with each other these ideas.
Yes, but we're working on it.
Yes.
Good.
By the end of the year, we want to talk a little bit more in class. But recently we were reading The Age of Innocence, and there are definitely some examples of phoniness in there.
Because, like, it's set in New York City during the 1870s, and everything is pretty much like putting on some sort of an act, and it's kind of like everything is within implications. Like, people don't really directly say things. It's just kind of like, for example, I think so that they go to this ball once a year. You know, this is like the upper crust society, and they all know each other, and they know the scandal, and they know what everyone's up to. And so, like, once a year they go to, it's called the Beauforts.
Yes,
they have a ball,
the Beauforts ball,
an annual ball, and everyone, when they see, you know, Regina Beaufort walking out of the opera, they know that 30 minutes later the ball starts. So that's kind of like an example. It's like so implied, but there's so much phoniness when you say, Quinn, in the society.
Yes, they never like truly say what they're thinking.
Yeah.
Especially, I think, if you guys haven't read the book, the main character is Newland Archer, and he's engaged to be married to May Welland, but he is like a secret love interest in May's cousin, Ellen Olenska. But with Newland and May, after they get married, they kind of have like this silent communication because they don't actually say what they're feeling. Like, it's obvious that May kind of knows that something's going on between Newland and Ellen, but she can only hint at it because it's not proper in society to come out and say it. And she's always like, oh, it's so nice of you that you went to go see Ellen. But does she really mean that?
And as the book progresses, you see multiple times when, you know, she has tears in her eyes, and just the things she says make it so clear that she does know that Newland has feelings for her cousin, which is really weird. But, yeah. So you see that. And, like, I feel like Newland, too, because Newland is just faced with, like, either Ellen or May, you know, the whole time, and he's trying to decide between May, who is kind of that, you know, responsibility, and then Ellen, he has passion for. So, and Ellen is she doesn't really fit in with society. She's very different, and May is, you know, just born and bred in that society, so he has to decide between the two, and he ends up with May, and there's a lot of phoniness there because he really kind of does desire to be different and to kind of elope. Is that the word?
Yeah.
And he even, like, talks to May about that when they're engaged, and he wants to you know, travel the world and just, you know, break away from the normal stream of things and that society. And she laughs it off, and she says, oh, shall we elope, you know, like, it's just a big joke, because she would never think of going out on a limb away from what's expected.
Yeah, because she's so blinded by the society that it's created her, or it's made her be phony. She's a product of the society as another phony. But Ellen is probably the least phony person in the whole book because she just does what she feels. She wants to get a divorce, which is so unconventional. She's
Mm-hmm.
just following what she wants to do, and she's not pretending she doesn't want to do these things because it would create scandal.
Right.
And I feel like we're ostracizing you, Amelia. Amelia doesn't go to our school, so
yeah. I haven't read this book yet, so I'm like, okay. I don't know these characters, but that's okay.
Or what lit class are you in?
I'm in a world literature class, is what it's called.
Oh.
Although I don't really know. We haven't really. It's not really. I don't know why it's called that actually. Anyways, we just read stuff. But yeah.
Have you read books? Have you read so far?
We have read. Let me think.
You know, you read so many books in lit classes, you just forget them all.
Have. You like. I'm blanking out on what we read. Okay, we read.
It's okay. We can always come back to it.
Yeah,
if you can't
that
remember.
Would be good.
Because, you know, we're kind of shooting this kind of late at night. It's almost midnight.
And I'm really tired, and let me think. Yeah, but keep talking.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Anyways, one thing I wanted to ask you, Quinn, because you recently read Catcher in the Rye, and I read it back in like 10th grade, but I've kind of forgotten a lot of the details. But you know, Holden is so like caught up with the word phony, and he like sees it in everything. So I feel like there's almost like he almost goes too far, and he can't see, you know, the good things in life, and he's kind of looking at everything with a glass half empty. So would you say that there is that point where it's just too much? Like,
I think he's definitely overly negative, where he's like hyper focused on phonies. Because I don't think he wants to be like them. He's so focused on not being like them that I think he is becoming one.
Yeah, that reminds me of Winesburg, Ohio.
Like, we definitely need to make a whole podcast about Winesburg, Ohio.
Yeah, but it makes sense because he's becoming the grotesque. Oh my gosh.
Yes, I feel like a lot of these ideas are repeated in multiple books.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So I remembered one of the books that we were reading, and I'm still in the process of reading it. But have you guys read The Great Gatsby?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that book actually is really about this topic. Like, seriously, a ton of the characters are really phony. Like, okay, just Gatsby himself is like, he's totally, everybody has a different story about him, and he's not really, no one really knows who he really is, and he pretends to be someone that he's not. He pretends to have all this money, and that he says, like, he's had this money his whole life, when in real life, he only acquired it.
He's like the new money.
Yeah, he's the new money.
Yeah, his family used to be poor, right?
And then he, like, acquired it, but no one really knows that. He pretends to be the old money, and, you know, he has these grand parties, but he's kind of this, like, illustrious, he's off on his own, he doesn't really talk to anybody, but, at the same time, you discover later in the book that the reason he's holding these big parties is just to win some girl from his past. And so it's really, you know, it's not what anyone expected. And he's kind of playing this whole thing that he wants to have all these people over, but it's really just for this one girl. So
and that definitely ties back.
Another thing is that the main character, Nick Carraway, is always saying, you know, I'm a very honest person, and he keeps going on about this. But he's really trying not to be phony, I think, but in reality, he really is, because he's kind of telling himself, you know, all these... Yeah, he's a hypocrite, you know? He's telling himself all these parties and all this stuff with Gatsby and Daisy and Tom and everyone. He's like, yeah, these are just some little casual events in my summer, but, the whole book is about them, so you kind of figure they must have had more than... like a big impact on him, even though he doesn't want to admit it. And there's a lot of times when he really just seems kind of a hypocrite in the book, and, you know, he's not really who he says he is what I think.
Yeah, and what you were saying about Gatsby kind of having this fake, almost identity with his monetary situation definitely ties back to that definition you were reading about, you know, like, trying to be someone that you're not.
Yeah, totally.
And I just feel like a lot of these kind of people with these phony characteristics are written into books because they're relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like since everybody's not perfect,
Right.
and I feel like showing people trying hard to become someone they're not to make themselves seem more impressive because they feel kind of insecure. I feel like that's kind of sometimes a natural reaction to want to act this way so they can be like everyone else, so they're not weird or different, so people will like them. And I feel like the people written into books, they're just so relatable when they act like that.
And I think what makes books so relatable to people is that, like, the writers often write about, like, what's going on with their own lives or things they've experienced. So I think it's so cool that, like, obviously, like, a computer can't write you a book. Like, it's, you know, from a real person, and in some way they relate to that their own book. So, you know, obviously it's the readers. There's, like, these kind of universal, you know, concepts that everyone can relate to in some way or another. I think it's so cool, you know, the way books bring people together. Even if they believe different things, they can still discuss.
It's because it's just full of so much information. I just find books fascinating. We should just make a whole podcast on books, because basically we're just talking about phoniness examples in books, but that so much ties into real life, like all ideas in books tie into real life.
Yeah.
Alright guys, we're going on about 17 minutes here, so I think we're going to wrap it up.
But, you know, we have an Instagram now. It is SkyQuinn107. So, you know, you should like our pictures. And we put updates. You know, we put a picture after every time we post a podcast. So that's, you know, a good indicator.
Oh, and we will be gone next week for Thanksgiving.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Because Sky and Amelia are going to Disney World. I'm so jealous.
Sorry.
We're super psyched.
Yep.
Well, this has been Quinn.
And Sky.
And Amelia. Thanks for having me, guys.
You're welcome. I hope that you have a great night. Goodbye.